wasn't expecting to make this video. After the crazy response on my Arcane fan game, I somehow landed a job at Riot Games. So, how did I get here? In this video, I'll go over just that. The events that led up to it, my experience at Riot, and how I completely rebuilt this scene from Arcane. Because, let's be honest, this wasn't gonna cut it. Most of you probably already know that I put together my own Arcane fan game. It was an FPS set in Zon that let you play as Jinx, built around that signature Foliage art style. It was a project that I created both as a creative outlet coming off the show, and as a way for me to create a portfolio piece while I was in between jobs. I posted the video, typed this as the description because I thought it was funny, and went to bed without thinking much of it. To my surprise, the video popped off. YouTube, Instagram, Reddit, LinkedIn. Hundreds of you were sharing it and tagging Riot. Someone even wrote an article. Others sent shirtless selfies for some reason. And eventually the video reached some people at Riot Games, including Mark Merrill, aka co-founder of the company, which was super cool to hear until I realized that this was his first impression of me. Thankfully, I didn't end up on some company blacklist. Instead, writers across a bunch of different teams ended up reaching out. I eventually signed with Riot under contract, and it's been really great. Just being able to step onto campus and see the wealth of creativity and passion has been surreal. But more importantly, they give you free RP. Truth be told, I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am today without your guys' support. So thank you so much. But there's one glaring problem. You might remember me say, what I made wasn't up to that standard of quality Foliage or Riot was known for. Which was fine for the time, but now my work is going to be potentially seen by real players with real expectations. And I felt underprepared. So I had to try again. For this attempt, I decided on 3 things. One was to choose one shot that I could recreate frame for frame. 2 was to focus on art over gameplay. And 3 was to make it in under 2 weeks. Because in exactly 2 weeks, I would be starting my job at Riot. And I needed to know before walking in if I could really live up to my own expectations. For this to work, I wanted to pick a scene that could both fit naturally in a game setting and still be realistic enough for me to pull off. I ended up really falling in love with this scene from Season 1, and using what I learned from my previous videos, I immediately started breaking down how I could potentially remake this in a game engine. First up, the mountains. I used Gaia to generate the landscape. It was a bit tricky because the program isn't really meant for anything stylized, but I managed to get pretty close to the look of the original scene. 2 nodes that really helped were distance and recurve. They sharpened up some of the mountain's edges and got rid of a lot of that unnecessary micro detail. After finishing the base, I brought it into Substance Painter to fully repaint it by hand. And since the game doesn't use dynamic time of day, I also painted the mountain's shadow directly onto the texture to lock in that lighting. If you remember the auto material I used in my previous video, it actually has the built-in option to add fake sunlight directly onto the texture, which made baked lighting super easy. It was a technique that I ended up using for a majority of the objects that were far off into the distance. And here's how it looked in game. Next up was the flower field. And honestly, I was dreading this one a bit. I made a few different grass and flower models and then hand painted them in Substance Painter, really trying to match those colors as closely as I could. But I knew right away that good models and textures alone weren't gonna be enough. You see, the show can get away with a lot by relying on 2D elements. But recreating that look in-game is difficult. Part of it is because I wanted to mimic the show's detail hierarchy. Objects up close are super well rendered, but as we go further back, grass and flowers sort of just fade into loose brushstrokes and flat colors. I knew right away that repeating the exact same flower mesh thousands of times wouldn't match that layered, illustrative look from the show on its own. So I did some research trying to find some other ways games do stylized grass, and ended up finding this from J Creations. I really loved how soft and fluffy their grass looked, and the colors stayed nice and flat, which I thought could work really well for my game. And the material is actually fairly simple. There's no shadows, and the grass is actually the same color as the ground, except for the tips. This gradient really makes the transition between the two nice and seamless. And then there's a second color that's layered on top, which sort of gives this shimmer effect. It's made by using a noise texture that pans across the landscape, which can be super apparent when I set the colors to black and white, like this. I took these learnings and implemented them into my own material, and it looked So I hand-placed a lot of the plants closest to my lens, which definitely helped, but it needed something else. Though at this point, I already worked on the grass for 4 days, and I started to get worried I wouldn't be able to finish this in time, so I decided to come back to it later. What I thought was really gonna make or break this scene was the fog and clouds. Right off the bat, I knew that this cloud in particular, casting the shadow over top the mountain, was gonna be the most important to nail down. I reused the 2D brushstrokes material that I made for my previous video, and hand-painted some fog and cloud textures that I could use both in the middle ground and for the cloud behind the mountain. I tried really hard to make sure that the cloud shadow and the shadow on the mountain were the same color, so that it looks like it's casting a shadow despite never actually doing so. I also made it so that the fog cards fade when the players get close, so you can never really tell that it's just a flat plane. And the cloud in the background is far enough away that the illusion is never broken. But this is when I realized that I could really rely on these 2D planes everywhere. You see, there were a couple of things that I realized that were wrong with my flowers. One was the fact that you could easily tell that they were 3D modeled. And two, I was missing these patches of flowers off into the distance. Mine sort of just disappear if you got far enough away. I ended up using this to my advantage by painting in flower beds and trees that fade into view at a distance. I also mixed in individual hand-painted cards with these 3D models. I made about 50 flower textures of varying detail, and it really helped bring back that hand-painted look out in the distance that I was really looking for. I thought I was finally getting into a decent place, but I really needed to hone in on the details in order to make this as close to the show as possible. So I modeled some trees in SpeedTree using hand-painted textures that I made in Photoshop. Also, shout out to Akbutia on YouTube. She has some amazing tutorials on stylized foliage that are definitely worth checking out. One detail that I missed was this subtle transition from the dark green and light green grass. So I added it into the material that the color would change based on the player's position. I also created these little magic motes, which were actually just a repurposed dust effect. The last step was to refine and color grade my scene, and these were the end results. I finally felt like I did Arcane some justice. And turning that into something playable felt genuinely rewarding. It also helped that I managed to put this together in just under 2 weeks, which definitely left me feeling a little better prepared heading into Riot. You know what I can't do in 2 weeks? Upload. Clearly, These videos take a while for me to make, and I would love for you to be here for the next one. So please subscribe and follow my socials. And do let me know what videos you would like to see in the future. Also, one of the goals for this channel is to help you guys create, and many of you have reached out to me for art advice. I'm always happy to help through my Discord, so if you have questions, please join. I would also love to showcase your guys' stuff. Also, I made a few starter playlists for anyone looking to learn. Those are going to be linked in the description, along with all the tools I used and some updates from me. I would have made a video editing playlist too, but I honestly would just watch this video from Tipo. His channel continues to be a big inspiration for mine, so I highly recommend him to anyone looking to get into digital art and editing. Alright, bye!